Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
We are from group 10. In this case, we will discuss about survey study, about longitudinal study, about cross-sectional study, and the last is trend studies. So this is our presentation, and we'll share screen material. Okay, in this group we have 4 members. The first is my name is Sania Alinda, and the second is Farah, and the third is Nur Nilam Sari, and the last is Dewi, Bunga, Fadhilah. And the first presentation about survey studies. This is my material. I will explain this material about survey studies. So survey studies has several characteristics. The first one is it represents a wide target of population, and after that, it generates numerical data, and the third is it captures data from test scores, from multiple choice, or etc. And after that, it gathers data that can be processed statistically. And in the survey studies, there are many examples of this research. The first is like in the opinion polls, and after that in the reading surveys and student preferences for particular course, and after that also in the test scores. And survey studies in this case relies on large-scale data, for example, from questionnaire, and after that attendance rates, and from the result of public examinations, and also from test scores, etc. And survey studies procedure, in this case, this research means that there are procedure in the quantitative research that the researcher administer a survey to a population, to enter of the population of to a sample. So in this case, when do we use this research? We use this research when we want to determine individual opinions about policy issues. And after that, survey research help us to identify important beliefs and attitudes of individuals. And in this case, survey research also help us to evaluate program at schools. For example, in this case, we need to determine the success of a robotic program in the science education. And the next key characteristic of survey research is sampling from population. So it means that the researcher needs to select and study about the sample from a population and generalize the result from a sample to the population. And in this case, population means that population is the group of the individuals that having one characteristic that distinguishes from other groups. And the example of this is we might have a population that made up of high school teachers. So it means that the individuals who all teach in high schools. And after that, from the target population, in this case, we can choose a sample. So in this case, at the most specific level, we can choose a sample from the target population. And after that, a sample is a group of participants in a study, in a research selected from the target population, or in this case, generalized to the target population. And after that, the second is collecting data through questionnaire or interviews. So it means that questionnaire is a form used when we want to conduct our research in the survey research. Particularly, in this case, we can give our questionnaire to our participants or our respondents. So the participant in this case will complete and will return the questionnaire, and they also fill the demographic information to the researcher. So in this case, the researcher use the questionnaire as the instrument of their study or their research. And the second is interview. So interview is the form used that the researcher use when they are conducting their research in a survey as a means of survey study. So for their data collection. So in this case, in the interview, the researcher gives the question to the participants, and after that, the participant will answer this question, and after that, the researcher will observe their behavior, and after that, the researcher will record their answer. And in this case, there are many types of questionnaires. And the first one is mail questionnaire. So a mail questionnaire is a instrument in the survey research, in the survey study in this case. And for our data collection in a survey research, the researchers mails a questionnaire to members of the sample. So the advantage of questionnaire of mail questionnaire is economical because it only involves duplication and mailing expenses. But the disadvantage of this questionnaire is the participant may misinterpret the item on the survey. And the second types of the questionnaire is a web-based questionnaire. So a web-based questionnaire in this case is an instrument for the researcher to collect the data in the survey research or survey study. And in this case, the researcher use this instrument that is available on the computer. And the advantage of this research instrument is it can gather extensive data quickly, effective, and economical survey. And after that, the disadvantage of this questionnaire is it may be biased towards certain demographic groups that tend to use computer. The next is the step in conducting survey research. The first one is decide if a survey is the best design to use. So in this case, survey research helps us to describe the trends or the characteristic in a population, to describe relationship among the variables or compare groups. And after that, survey research also help us to describe or to assess the trend or characteristic of a population, to learn individuals' attitude, individuals' opinions, individual practices, or individuals, in this case, beliefs. And after that, this research also can help us to evaluate the success or the effectiveness of a program. And the last, this research also can identify the needs of a community. And there are advantages when we conduct our research, use this research, this survey research. The first one is we can administer them in a short time. They are economical as a means of data collection. And the third is they can reach a geographically dispersed population. And after that, the second step is identify the research question or hypothesis. The third is identify the population, the sampling frame, and the sample. So in this case, we need to select the characteristic of our population. For example, male or females are presented to a sample. And after that, in this case, we need to identify the target population and compile a list of its members. And after that, we can select the sample. And the fourth is determine the survey design and the data collection procedure. So in this case, the researcher must determine if the survey study or the survey research will be cross-sectional study or longitudinal study or etc. So the decision to use a longitudinal study or cross-sectional study are based on three types. The first one is the nature of the problem studied. The second is the access to the participant. And the last is the time available to the researcher for the data collection. So the data collection will be based on questionnaire or interview. And the fifth is develop or locate an instrument. So in this case, we need an instrument to measure or to collect the variable in our study, in our research. So in this case, we need to prepare our questionnaire. We need to prepare how we conduct our interview, like that. And the sixth is analyze the data to address the research question or hypothesis. So in this case, the data analysis procedure will reflect the research question or hypothesis. The participant plans to address in the study or in the research. And the last is write the report. So in this case, we need to write our report in our study, in our research, using a standard quantitative structure that consists of an introduction, and after that, a review of literature, the methods, the result, and the discussion. And in the method section, we need to specify the information, the detailed information that consists about the survey procedure. Okay, that's all for me. So we move to the next section about longitudinal studies.
Okay, I will explain about longitudinal study. The term longitudinal is used to describe a variety of studies that are conducted over a period of time. Often, as we have seen, the word developmental is employed in connection with longitudinal study that deals specifically with aspects of human growth. The longitudinal study gathered data over an extended period of time. A short-term investigation may take several weeks or months. A long-term study can extend over many years, where successive measures are taken a different point in time from the same respondent. The term follow-up study or core study is used in the British lecture. The equivalent term in the United States being the planner study. The term core is a group of people with some common characteristic. A core study instead sometimes differentiated from a panel study. In a core study, a specific population is struck over a specific period of time, but selective sampling within that sample occur. This means that some member of a cohort may not be included each time. By contrast, is a panel study, its same individual is struck over time. And then uh, Coral studies and trend studies are perspective longitudinal methods in that uh, they are ongoing in their collection of information about individual or their monitoring of specific event. Perspective longitudinal study, of the other hand, focus upon individuals who have speaker some defined endpoint or state. For example, a group of your people may be the research particular eaters. Uh, and the question to which we see will endure self likely to include one such as, is there anything about the preferred inference of the individual that can account for their present situation? Retrospective analysis is not confided not too long in the longitudinal study alone. For example, suggests that for sectional study can use retrospective factual question. Uh, as the quality of data diminishes the farther back one asks respondent to recall previous stats or even fact. Okay, thank you. The next explained by Nur Nilam Sari.
Okay, thank you so much, Farah Mufrida, for your explanation. So the next material will be explained by Nur Nilam Sari. I'm sorry because there is problem with my laptop, so I will share screen again.
Okay, and then about a cross-sectional study. So a cross-sectional study is one that produces a snapshot of a population at a particular point in time. The epitome of the cross-sectional study is a national census in which a representative sample of the population, consisting of individuals of a different age, different occupation, different educational and income levels, and residing in different parts of the country, is interviewed on the same day. More typically in education, cross-sectional study involve indirect measure of the nature and rate of change in the physical and intellectual development of sample of children drawn from respective age levels. The single snapshot of the cross-sectional study provide researchers with the data, either a retrospective or a prospective inquiry. So and then it's about strength and weakness of cohort and cross-sectional studies. So longitudinal studies of the cohort analysis type have an important place in the research armory of educational investigator. Cohort study of human growth and development conduct on representative sample of a population are uniquely able to identify typical pattern of the development and to reveal factor operating on the sample, which to other research design. And then the permit researcher to examine individual variation in characteristics of train and to produce individual growth curves. And then cohort study to are particularly operate when investigators attempt to establish causal relationship. For this task involve identifying change in certain characteristics that result in change in other. And cross-sectional design are inappropriate in causal research. And cohort analysis is especially useful in sociological research because it can show how changing properties of individuals fit together into changing properties of social system as a whole. For example, the study of staff morale and its association with the emerging organizational climate of a newly opened school would lend itself to this type of development research. A further strength of cohort study in school is that they provide longitudinal record whose value derived in part from the no fallibility of any single test or assessment. It's by C. Devi, 1972. And finally, time, always a limiting factor in experimental and interview setting, is generally more readily available in cohort studies, allowing the researcher great opportunity to observe trend and to distinguish real change from change occurrences. It's by Bailey, 1978. And then it's about cohort study, as we have seen, are particularly operate in research on human growth and development. Why then are so many studies in the era cross-sectional in design? The reason is that they have a number of advantages over cohort study. They are less expensive. They produce finding more quickly. They are less likely to suffer from counter effect, and they are more likely to secure the cooperation of respondents on one-off basic. Generally, cross-section design are able to include more subjects than cohort design. And then the strength of cohort analysis are the weaknesses of the cross-sectional design. The cross-sectional study is less effective method for the researcher who is concerned to identify individual variation in growth or to establish cause relationship between between variable. And then sampling in the cross-sectional study is complicated because different subjects are involved at level and may not comparable. Further problem arising out the selection effect and the obscure of irregulation in growth weakness the cross-sectional study so much that one observer dismisses the method as a highly unsatisfactory way of obtaining development data, except for the current purpose. And then the comparative strength and weakness of language study, including restorative studies, cross-section analysis, and trend study are summarized in several of the strength and weakness reflect longitudinal study share the same characteristic. And then for the next will be delivered by Bunga.
Okay, I will continue the material. I will explain the material about trend studies. In some surveys, research aimed to study change within some general population over a period of time. Baby 1998. This form of longitudinal research is called a trend study. Another definition, trend studies are longitudinal surveys, designs that involve identifying a population and examining change within the population over time. Example of a trend study is the survey on alcohol, tobacco, and other drug use among Indiana youth conducted annually since 1991 by Indiana Prevention Research Center. The 2007 survey collected data from 158 32 pupils in public and private schools in Indiana. Results include continuing long-term the decline in cigarette smoking, an increase in binge drinking, a 3-year decline in marijuana use, and a change in the use of injection drugs. Among the relationships found was that adolescents involved in after-school activities were less likely to use alcohol, tobacco, and drugs designs. Next slide. This continuing trend study permits research to evaluate the prevention and common efforts directed at the teenage population and to plan future programs. The first is cohort studies. In a cohort study, a specific population is followed over a length of time with different random sample studies at various. Whereas trend studies sample a general population that changes in membership over time, a cohort study samples a specific population whose members do not change over the duration of the survey. Second, cross-sectional surveys. Cross-sectional survey study a cross-section or sample of a population at a single point in time. In a longitudinal study of vocabulary development. Third, panel studies. Panel studies is a third type of longitudinal survey design. A panel study is a longitudinal survey design in which the researcher examines the same people over time. The disadvantage of a panel design is that individuals may be difficult to locate. The advantage to this type of study, however, is that the individual studies will be the same each time, allowing the researcher to determine actual change in specific individuals Because of this, the panel study is the most rigorous of the 3 longitudinal.
Okay, thank you very much. So that's all from our presentation. So if you have question, you can ask our members. Okay, that's all. Akhirul kalam. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.